Good morning and welcome to this morning's reflection, and it's good to be together again. And today we're going to be looking at Psalm 85 and looking at mercy and justice. I'm not going to read the whole of the psalm, but just this short excerpt. Mercy and faithfulness meet, justice and peace embrace. Faithfulness springs from the earth, and justice looks down from heaven. Our society is locked in a battle between what we think mercy and justice to be. And which do we choose? Which do we think is more right? And which side do we want to be on when we cut corners or bend the rules or break the codes? What do we want when we find ourselves before the justice of the land or the justice of the church? We call the people who argue on behalf of mercy, we often refer to them as bleeding hearts. And we call the people who cry for more prisons and longer sentences or capital punishment, we see them as being hard of heart. But what we never seem to consider, however, is that mercy and justice may be the same thing. What if you cannot separate them? Then what must we do when we come to judge others? As things stand now, though, we make enemies out of the elements that are inextricably linked, and they have to be linked in order for justice and mercy to function. We make opposites out of elements which, if they separate from one another, are weakened. We think that we must be one or the other, instead of learning how to be both at the same time. We forget that it can be merciful to restrain a person from harming either themselves or others. And we fail to remember that it can be the highest form of justice to practice mercy. We forget this until one day we need them both ourselves. Until we examine our own lives and the lives of those we love and find them bathed in mercy, where many would have said that justice was required. Then we understand God a little bit better, and then we understand both mercy and justice in a different way. The strangest of all human phenomena, perhaps, is the fact that we all take God's mercy for granted for ourselves, but we find it so hard to be merciful ourselves. And if there were any proof ever needed that God is completely other than us, then this is surely it. Justice is often confused with righteousness. Justice requires us to take every slightest mitigating factor of an event into account. Justice must look at the motive, the might, and the need. Righteousness tends only to look at the law. There was a young labourer who was in prison, and one day a nun coming to visit in the prison asked him what he had been imprisoned for. And he said, for stealing $50. The nun replied, "Too bad you didn't steal a railroad. You could be in the Senate by now." It makes you think, doesn't it? How did blue-collar crime get to be such a scourge? and yet white-collar crime is just one of the vagaries of business. It is a question worth pursuing. The answer could tell us more than we may want to know about our own society, about ourselves, and about our standards of both justice and mercy. And here is a small story from the wisdom tradition. Who is closer to God, the seeker asked, the saint or the sinner? Why, the sinner, of course, the elder said. But how can that be? The seeker asked. Because, the elder said, every time a person sins, they break the cord that binds them to God. But every time God forgives them, the cord is knotted again. And so, thanks to the mercy of God, the cord gets shorter and the sinner closer to God. And so today, find some activity that is related to justice and mercy. Perhaps you could volunteer in some organization that feeds the poor or in some way works for justice and mercy for the poor, or justice and mercy for the communities in which you live. Amen.